The king is running. The streets of Paris are restless, flickering torchlight casting long, menacing shadows against stone buildings. The air is thick with the scent of rain and sweat, the hushed murmurs of revolutionaries drifting through the alleys like ghosts. The wheels of a carriage rattle against the cobblestones, carrying a desperate man who was once untouchable. But not anymore. Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, disguised as commoners, slip into a waiting carriage under the cover of darkness. Their hearts pound with fear as the wheels rattle against the cobblestones, carrying them toward what they believe is freedom. But outside, the streets of France whisper of revolution, and their fate is already sealed. They are dressed as commoners, their children huddled close. Outside, the streets of France are no longer theirs. The people whisper of revolution. The king believes he can escape. He is wrong. By dawn, the fate of the monarchy will be sealed. But how did it come to this? And what followed after the fall? Stay with us as we unravel the dramatic downfall of France's last absolute monarch. The revolution had already shaken France to its core. The Women's March on Versailles forced the royal family to abandon their palace and relocate to Paris under the watchful eye of the revolutionaries. But Louis XVI still believed he could turn the tide. He saw himself as a king, chosen by God, above the grasp of the people. So, on the night of June 20th, 1791, he made his move. The plan was simple. Flee to the loyalist stronghold of Montmedy, where royalist troops awaited him. Montmedy, located near the northeastern border, was chosen because it was a stronghold of military support and far from the revolutionary stronghold of Paris. From there, he would rally support and crush the revolution. But Louis wavered at the crucial moment, torn between conflicting advice. His wife urged decisive action while his advisors hesitated, fearing the people's reaction. This internal division paralyzed him, costing him precious time. Every second lost was another step toward disaster. His delay turned what could have been a swift escape into a slow, creeping failure. It was a fatal hesitation that sealed his fate. The journey was doomed from the start. Imagine trying to escape in a modern-day limousine while being hunted. Too slow, too grand, too recognizable. The royal carriage stood out like a beacon, ensuring their capture. At a stop in Varennes, a local postmaster identified the king's face. It was printed on every coin in France. Word spread like wildfire. The people swarmed the carriage, blocking the road. One revolutionary, Jean-Baptiste Drouet, a former soldier turned postmaster, played a crucial role in recognizing the king and ensuring his arrest, a moment that would change history forever. Louis XVI was arrested and dragged back to Paris in humiliation. He had tried to abandon his people. Now they would abandon him. The failed escape shattered any remaining illusion of loyalty between king and country. The people saw the truth. Louis XVI was no longer their ruler, he was their enemy. In response, the National Assembly stripped the king of much of his power, but the revolution was no longer just about France. The crowned heads of Europe were watching in horror. If a king could fall in Paris, what was stopping the people of Austria or Prussia from rising up next? And so, war came. It was like lighting a fuse to a powder keg, unstoppable and catastrophic. France's declaration of war didn't just threaten foreign monarchies, it set off a chain reaction that would consume the nation itself. In April 1792, revolutionary France declared war on Austria and Prussia, believing it would spread the flame of revolution beyond their borders. This war was fueled by both ideological and practical concerns. Many revolutionaries believed that war would unite the nation, while royalists hoped foreign intervention might restore the monarchy. Austria, where Marie Antoinette's family ruled, had already warned France against harming the royal family, further fueling tensions. Prussia, eager to prevent revolutionary ideas from spreading, joined the conflict turning it into a fight for the very survival of the French Republic. But war breeds fear, and fear breeds extremism. The streets of Paris were filled with cries of betrayal. Enemies were everywhere, they whispered. Traitors within, spies among us. The radicals, led by Maximilien Robespierre and Georges Danton, took center stage, much like revolutionaries in any modern uprising who seize the moment to push their ideals. Only this time, their stage was drenched in blood. Danton, a master orator, once declared, "Audacity, more audacity, always audacity," a cry that fueled the revolution's most radical phase. The Girondins, the more moderate revolutionaries, wanted a constitutional monarchy. The Girondins were a political faction that initially supported a constitutional monarchy, but later found themselves caught between radical revolutionaries and royalists. But the Jacobins, they wanted blood. And blood they would get. In August 10, 1792, the people had had enough. The Tuileries Palace, the last refuge of the monarchy in Paris, stood guarded by the Swiss guards. The Tuileries Palace was the official residence of the French monarchy in Paris, where the royal family was confined before the fall of the monarchy. Inside, Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette, and their children waited. Outside, thousands of armed revolutionaries gathered. The National Guard, once meant to protect the monarchy, turned against it. Then the attack began. The Swiss guards fought bravely, but they were outnumbered, overwhelmed, slaughtered. Nearly 600 of them were killed in the palace courtyard, their bodies left in the streets as a brutal warning to those who still supported the monarchy. The palace was ransacked. The royal family barely escaped, seeking refuge in the Legislative Assembly. But there was no escape. The monarchy was officially abolished. The National Assembly erupted in cheers and cries of victory, while outside, church bells tolled and cannons fired in triumphant celebration. Yet amidst the joy, whispers of uncertainty lingered. Had they truly secured freedom? Or had they merely set the stage for more bloodshed? Or had they merely replaced one tyranny with another? What would come next? Could a country truly exist without a king? The euphoria of revolution masked an uneasy truth. The battle for France's future was just beginning. Louis XVI was no longer King of France. He was just citizen Louis Capet now, and the people were hungry for justice. Stripped of his crown, Louis XVI was put on trial for treason. The evidence? His letters, his failed escape, his alliances with foreign monarchs, proof of a king who had turned against his own nation. The trial was swift, merciless, inevitable. The convention, now dominated by the Jacobins, debated fiercely over whether to execute Louis or imprison him. The final vote was close. 361 deputies voted for his execution, just 34 votes over the majority needed. The debate was heated, with some deputies fearing that executing the king would plunge France further into chaos, while others saw it as the only way to secure the revolution's survival. In the end, the weight of Louis's betrayal and alliances with foreign monarchs sealed his fate. One deputy, Philippe Égalité, formerly known as the Duke of Orléans and a cousin of the king, even voted for Louis's death, forever sealing his legacy as a traitor to the monarchy. Even some who supported the revolution hesitated, fearing the consequences of regicide. January 21st, 1793. The Place de la Révolution. Picture a modern execution broadcasted worldwide. The fate of a leader decided before an audience of thousands. The weight of history hung over the square, and the world watched as a monarchy centuries in the making came to an end. The air was thick with tension, a sea of revolutionaries pressing against the barricades. Some stood in solemn silence, their faces grim, while others shouted with unbridled fury, cursing the man who had once ruled them. drums pounded, a relentless rhythm of inevitability. The crowd, restless and electric, waited for the moment that would define the new republic. The guillotine, freshly sharpened, stood waiting. A device used for executions, the guillotine became the symbol of the Reign of Terror, used to eliminate enemies of the Revolution. Louis XVI climbed the steps, turning one last time to face the people he once ruled. A witness, Henry Essex Edgeworth, his confessor, later recalled how the king's hands trembled, but his voice remained steady, an eerie calm before the fall. Witness accounts describe him as composed, though pale. His final words were cut off, drowned by the sounds of the drums and the cries of the crowd. He tried to speak, "I die innocent of all crimes." But the drums drowned his voice. And then, the blade fell. Silence. And then cheers. The king was dead. The Republic was born in blood. France had done the unthinkable. It had executed its own king. But the revolution was far from over. With the monarchy gone, a power vacuum emerged. Radical factions would turn against each other. The streets of Paris would run red as the Reign of Terror began. Even those who had once cheered the guillotine would find themselves beneath it. Because in revolutionary France, yesterday's patriot could be tomorrow's traitor. And the guillotine? It was like an algorithm of terror. Once set in motion, it never stopped, consuming those who had once wielded it as a tool of justice. Even the architect of the Reign of Terror, Robespierre himself, would eventually meet its blade, a victim of the very revolution he helped create. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we dive into the bloodiest chapter of the French Revolution, the Reign of Terror, where once the revolution stood united, now it would turn on itself. Friends would become enemies, and even those who wielded the guillotine would not escape its blade. If you found this deep dive into history gripping, make sure to like and subscribe. The story of the French Revolution is far from over, and we'll be uncovering how the revolution devoured its own. What do you think? Was the execution of the king necessary, or was it a mistake? Let us know in the comments.